Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends, scholars and dignitaries, welcome to another episode. Welcome to my world. Hello, friends. So, Time magazine, on the 40th anniversary of the moon landing, did an article on the top conspiracy theories in the United States. Now, rumor has it that the term conspiracy theorist actually started in the 1960s when the CIA used it to neutralize people who did not believe the government story on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. And so the CIA spread the term conspiracy theorist to try to convince the greater population that these people who refuted the government's contention that Kennedy was killed by a lone gunman by the name of Lee Harvey Oswald are crazy. But really, the term was first coined conspiracy theory by the philosopher Sir Karl Popper back in the 1950s, although it had a bad connotation even back then. The JFK assassination. So most everyone knows about the horrific event of November 22nd, 1963, when President John F. Kennedy, a beloved president, was killed in Dallas, Texas. He was shot and struck by two bullets, once in the head and once in the neck, as he was riding in an open-topped limousine. A lone man who allegedly had Russian connections, Lee Harvey Oswald, was charged with killing him, and a presidential commission investigated and ruled that Oswald acted alone. But right from the beginning, there were questions that either weren't answered or which didn't add up. In fact, one ABC News poll found that 70% of Americans believed Kennedy's death was the result of a broader plot, a conspiracy that went well beyond just one man, and that the majority believed it had no connection at all with Russia. Some say that because of the range and trajectory of the bullets, Oswald was not able to shoot in that manner from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository. Others suggest that there was a second shot from a different direction and possibly a second gunman, maybe in the grassy knoll of the nearby plaza. Others suggested that it was even broader and may have included Communist Cuba, the Mafia, or even the CIA itself acting in a self-interest capacity against the Kennedy administration. There is even a theory that Vice President Lyndon Johnson knew of and approved the assassination in advance, although he did not participate in it at all. In either case, only 32% of the population believed that Oswald had the ability or capability to assassinate John Kennedy in that manner, and that the government's report was sorely lacking and did not consider all the evidence. So for a lot of people, the JFK assassination is still open and yet to be solved. 9/11. So another event that drew much speculation was the bombing and collapse of the World Trade Centers in New York on September 11th, 2001. In fact, this may be the greatest of all the conspiracy theories. On September 11th, 2001, two planes hit the two towers of the World Trade Center in New York City. Within hours, both towers collapsed, as well as Building 7, which had never been hit by a plane and had suffered only several incidental office fires and never should have collapsed. One poll found that 42% of Americans believed that the government and the 9/11 Commission, quote, concealed or refused to investigate critical evidence that contradicts the official explanation of the September 11th attacks. And the sheer amount of evidence to the contrary has only fed more and more conspiracy theories. There were questions about the towers. In fact, a report by the Architects and Engineers for Truth, a group of about 3,500 architects and engineers, came out and said that the planes and fires did not and could not bring down the steel reinforced buildings, but their collapse was a result of a controlled demolition. And again, they reiterated that Building 7 could never have fallen down from those few incidental fires that had already been brought under control. Similarly, questions remained about the third plane that crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, as well as that fourth plane that hit the Pentagon on that same day. So many questions remain based upon an incredible amount of documentary evidence that suggests to some that while the government did not plan the attacks, the government story may not be entirely true, and there is much more beneath the story of the bombings of the World Trade Center that the government has yet to disclose. UFOs in Area 51. A third long-standing conspiracy theory, in fact one of the longest, is about Area 51 and space aliens. In 1947, the U.S. Army Air Force recovered debris from Roswell, New Mexico, and early reports stated that it was from a crashed disk, that is, a UFO. That story was later rescinded, and the government said it was from a crashed weather balloon. Ever since then, rumors have flowed about recovered UFOs and alien bodies being held and examined at the Area 51 Air Force Base, a military installation that's highly classified and secret, and one of the few places where trespassers can be killed on site with prejudice, even without warning or interrogation. In other words, a government installation where your rights are no longer valid. And since then, we've had many witnesses testify about the reality of UFOs, including by Bob Lazar, who allegedly worked there, and by Dr. Stephen Greer and the Disclosure Project. And of course, we've had numerous sightings of UFOs ever since then, as well as some really advanced technology. Yet the governor's initial report and their report on UFOs, Project Blue Book, dismissed all UFO sightings as misidentified normal airplanes or weather balloons or even illusions based upon swamp gas, but they refused to acknowledge it, as well as the latest government report released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence in 2021, which failed to identify 144 of 145 UFO sightings, yet again refused to confirm the existence of UFOs. Many believe that there is overwhelming proof of the existence of UFOs and that the government, in fact all governments, are hiding the truth from the people. The landing on the moon. It's now been nearly 4 decades since man landed on the moon, and astronaut Neil Armstrong said in his iconic phrase, quote, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." That said, there are many people who do not believe that we ever landed on the moon. President John Kennedy said in a national speech in 1961 that he wanted the United States to land on the moon by 1969. We were in a Cold War with Russia, and Russia had already sent a man into space. So to match this, Kennedy wanted to set an American on the moon. However, many believe that we never landed on the moon on July 20th, 1969. Doubters say that the moon landing was fake, that the technology did not exist in 1969 for a moon landing, and that the U.S. government faked the landing with astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin acting out that landing on a secret film set in England. In fact, a journalist reported that Stanley Kubrick, a well-known director, before he died, actually came out and said that he directed the fake moon landing in an interview. Apparently, he told the reporter that, quote, he perpetuated a huge fraud on the American public involving the United States government and NASA, and the moon landings were fake, and the moon landings all were faked, and that he was the person who filmed it. Now, there's no independent verification about that interview or that the lunar landings were a hoax, but others have pointed out discrepancies about the moon landing that couldn't easily be explained away, like the American flag on the moon waving in a breeze, the lack of stars in the sky, the shadows on the ground, and the animated motions of the astronauts. So far-fetched as it may seem, immediately in 1969, people thought that the moon landing was a hoax, and that number has only grown since then, especially since we haven't been back to the moon since 1972. Aliens among us. This last conspiracy theory is one of my favorites, and like the others, there is some evidence that it may be true. Several people have come forth now with information not just about UFOs, but about our world being inhabited with aliens from outer space. Yes, this is the UFO theory, but it goes well beyond. One theory says that there are at least 4 different groups of aliens from different parts of the galaxy living in secret here on Earth, at least 4 races of aliens which are already here on Earth. They are the Orions, the Pleiadians, reportedly a group resembling Nordics who are tall, have blonde hair and blue eyes, and resemble humans so closely that they walk among us and can't be detected as extraterrestrial beings. The Greys and the Reptilians, or the Anunnaki, who reportedly have controlled humankind since ancient times and may be one of the races that's actually hostile to us and is vying for control of the Earth. And a Sergeant Stone, a military specialist who is charged with UFO recovery as well as working with the aliens himself, reported that he is aware of some 57 different alien races living here on Earth. And here's where it gets interesting. At least one of those races is aggressive and not friendly to the human race, and there may be others as well. Sources have stated that there have been more than one battle between our military and those visitors from other worlds. An engineer by the name of Phil Schneider, who worked on underground bases for the U.S. military, told of breaking into an unfriendly alien cavern and entering into a firefight with himself and U.S. Marines against the aliens, wherein he was shot and injured, and a number of the Marines were killed by these aliens. And there's another story with some legitimacy about a firefight with U.S. Delta forces and aliens in an underground bunker in Dulce, New Mexico, when the U.S. forces went in to free captive American citizens. And it was an extensive and deadly battle for both sides. Reportedly, the American military knew of 7 levels to the aliens' underground bunker system, but supposedly there could be many more, as well as a connection of tunnels to the alien bunkers across the entire world. So, is it true? Or is it just another conspiracy theory? Hey, be safe, be well. And these days, it might be wise to remain a little skeptical about what the news reports and about what the government says. And may God bless.